Welcome, everybody, to this discussion as part of the Illumination Project of the Springfield History Museum. Really pleased to be here. I'm here with Aimee Yogi. Mimi Noliedo is taking photographs, and we're lucky to chat with Helen Liu about a project that you did recently. And how are you today?
Good.
Thanks for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, would you like to introduce yourself briefly and talk about your background with this art project?
Yes, thank you. I am a visual artist, and I have been working in graphic design to begin with, and then later when I had children, I decided to not work outside the home and started doing my own art. So that's been almost 30 years, I guess, something like that.
Wow.
So this recent project came out of basically kind of a concern for all the plastic waste that I personally generate, but also in the community. And started when I was living in Taiwan in 2010 with my family. My two kids and my husband were there. And they do a really good job of collecting almost everything,
Really?
just household trash and compost, and all the plastic seems to be all collected. And so I was very impressed. And then so I got really used to sort of collecting everything, like including like the film that goes on top of like a yogurt container. They
To
just
seal it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So when I came back here, I was like, oh my God, there's nowhere to put this stuff. And I was still collecting, but there was nowhere for this stuff to go. So I just kept collecting, and then pretty soon my garage was kind of getting full, and so eventually I did make a couple of large pieces, and that went. It was a backdrop for a recital in Bell Hall. That was my first one, and that one was 20 feet by 10 feet. 20 feet wide and 10 feet.
Had you seen it there at Beale Hall?
No.
Yeah, it's on my website if you want to take a look at it. But
Wonderful. But Aimee has seen the ramen packets that are a part of the project that you did. And that's why, since you've seen it, you were so excited to bring it into this whole Asian American representation and
Right.
visibility project.
Okay, it's put together by sewing, like a quilt. Sewing
Kind of,
it?
yeah, part of it. So I started out, the first piece that I did, the 20 by 10, I had never done anything like this. I never worked with plastic. All the materials I ever worked with was with traditional art materials, things are archival, white, charcoal, oil, watercolor. So it was really kind of I just was doing it by the seat of my pants. I didn't know what was going to work. So the only way I can think of to put plastic to plastic together is by tape. So I taped that whole thing, that first piece. But then I thought, well, I'm just using more plastic. So I'm going to make the next piece, I'm going to sew it all and not use plastic. So I did sew the second piece, which was, how big was that? Anyway, it was smaller, a little smaller, but still very big. And I killed my sewing machine, and I killed my mother's sewing machine. I had to buy a third one, and so because it's so big, the first two sewing machines were really old, so they were kind of ready to go anyway.
I see.
But then this one, I did a combination of sewing and taping because it is so big. It is 40 feet by 12 feet high.
Wow.
Right.
And so the way it started was that I saw something for the Springfield Arts Commission. They were looking for applications. So actually, let me back up just a little bit. I had proposed a project with the city of Eugene downtown, and is also plastic related, and I wanted to wrap the trees with plastic.
Nice.
And also
What an interesting juxtaposition that would have been.
Right,
plastic
exactly.
wrapped around the trees.
And the dirt, I was going to cover the dirt with plastic and have the plastic go up the tree and into the branches. So it's kind of like the plastic is kind of taking over the earth, kind of, and
Wow.
covering the earth. But I don't know. I don't want to make the city of Virginia sound bad.
Well,
but
we
you
sure
can
wouldn't
edit
do
it out, I
that. We would
suppose.
never do that. We
Well, we're
are
in
friendly
Springfield, so we're-
river neighbors. But let me ask you, because when I hear about this, I'm seeing an environmental consciousness that's
Yeah.
deeply
Right.
at the part of it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Do you think that you've had a background in that as a particular part of your life to be concerned ecologically, or just came to you in this way?
It kind of grew over time. I think just from my gardening, I grew up, I was telling Amy, I grew up on a chicken farm in southern Taiwan, bare feet, like probably 11 months out of the 12, whatever, they say that chicken farm is like probably the second dirtiest kind of farm that you can grow up in.
Next to pigs?
Yeah, I think a cattle ranch is
okay.
the worst or something.
I hear there's a lot
But
of
that's why I'm so healthy,
feces.
because I've been exposed to all kinds of
She's immune
stuff.
to everything.
Right.
Yeah.
But anyway,
But also the culture, like you say,
Yeah.
they took all the plastic someplace.
And
so
yeah.
growing up in that culture led you to doing this and saying, this is what's different
that
here."
is a really good point, because really
Yes.
that stems from the Taiwanese culture of being very frugal. I mean, we don't like to waste anything. And I always tell that my aunt used to save leftovers that are like literally like a bite. Like if there's a piece of fish that's
My girlfriend-
right? I mean,
my girlfriend, who was a wonderful white American, was giving me a hard time because I was going to take home like half of my crab fried rice from Tao Ren yesterday.
well, yeah.
And she said,
like,
"You didn't even like that very much, honey. You don't need to take that." I'm not going to give this up. This is
No.
I'm Japanese and that's not Taiwanese, but I
Right.
can feel some of that
But I
cultural
think-
symbiosis.
yeah, and I think
No offense to my girlfriend, I'm
It's-
sure.
no,
an
no,
ethic.
but it's
an ethic
it
that
is,
we
and I
hold.
think it's much
and I think
more.
we're encouraged to waste in the West, I think,
Yeah.
in
Well, I think-
some ways.
Well, I think we are so fortunate here in America to have so much food. Really, literally, like all the apples on the ground kind of thing. Like I mean, that just doesn't happen in Taiwan. You know what I mean? People just don't let ripe apples rot on the ground.
Yeah.
They would glean. They would, it's like everyone, just like you just don't see that kind of waste. So I grew up with people using I think in this country too, people that the older generation that went through the Depression, that
Yes.
knew what hunger was, and then they didn't waste anything. Like people that I knew that were in the 80s when I was in my 30s or whatever that was, people who might be 100 years old right now that went through that period that they saved everything. I mean,
Yeah.
they used paper on both sides. They, you know what I mean? They save copy paper to write notes on. I mean, I still do that.
Yes.
So for Taiwanese, it's just kind of like it still is, even though Taiwan is really a very wealthy country right now. It's very modern, but
It's also an island.
yeah, and it's
When you're on an island,
And it's-
you have limited.
the arable land is very small.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
yeah.
Yes.
You have to be
Similar to
conservative.
Japan.
Right, exactly.
So little of the land is arable.
Right.
Or really inhabitable because of the mountainous nature.
Right, and Taiwan is like this, there's a little bit of sliver of land, and then it goes like this, and
Yeah.
it's hard to live up on those, on the hills. But anyway,
Can I ask you, with the quilt project that you've done, and I believe this video will accompany an image of it. I hope that's possible.
sure.
Do you feel the impact that it's had has been positive? Have you heard people say anything about it, or do you feel that it's connected?
Yeah. Well, it's really nice that Amy remembered this project and asked me to talk about it. It was not up for very long, and every time I make one of these, I don't think about what happens to it afterward.
After.
I'm kind of focused on just making the piece, and if I can get it exhibited, shown somewhere, and that's what video cameras and photographs are for. I figure I document it, put it somewhere, and then that's good enough. But every time I make one of these, somebody would say to me, "Oh, somebody needs to buy this and put it in a lobby somewhere," or this needs to be in that's such and such museum. And I said, "Well, you just go contact them, and then I'll just give it to them for free." I don't. So the very first piece I did, I cut it up because I didn't want to take it home. So I actually cut it up into 24 pieces, and then I gave it away to the audience for, I think, a donation to Bring Recycling, because I didn't
Wow.
want to take it home and just store it in my garage for who knows how long, and it
Bring
wasn't
recycling, an important part of this
Yeah.
town's community, absolutely,
right.
too.
So you asked earlier about well, two things about how I became sort of this whole environmental thing. I think it just kind of grew over time, and then everyone, right, we know about the problem that the planet is having due to all the waste and especially plastic. So there's been just kind of a journey. And then as far as the attention, it would have been nice if this was a permanent installation, because I do get people asking me, is it still there? Can I go look at it? And I go, no, it's not there anymore.
Right.
So, but I did cut a 20 by 8 foot piece for the Asian Celebration backdrop for our main stage. So it's been used twice now, last year and the year before, this year and the year before.
Yeah.
So
Wonderful.
maybe we can make a new one or add to it or change it or something. So it is getting some attention that way. So, yeah. It's
Yeah,
nice.
Absolutely.
and it really is beautiful as a piece. It is to take all those little pieces of everybody's contribution, and there's a theme, but there's no one movement or anything. But to take all of that and to make it an art piece is just phenomenal to me. It's gorgeous. It is,
Thank
and it
you.
makes its point. This is all plastic. This is rubbish that was discarded, and we cannot even recycle it. That it's so important to realize that it's beautiful, but it is something we need to deal with.
Well, also, I call it we're all in this together, because we are all
Yes.
responsible, and so in a way, the project as proposed to the Springfield Arts Commission was that I would have I would hold these sort of community workshops, and people would come and either bring their own plastic, or I'll provide the plastic, and then we would make the piece together. But then COVID happened. That was supposed to be that 4 months before Earth Day, so I proposed to have the thing displayed in downtown after the City of Eugene project fell through, and they didn't. How should I put it? It just didn't work out.
Sure.
They didn't. They liked the idea, but the logistically they felt like they couldn't. They couldn't do it anyway.
Yes.
So I wanted to bring it to Springfield, because I saw this grant. And I thought, oh, what it would be? Something could happen downtown. So when COVID happened, though, I thought, well, we'll just wait and see. Nobody knew how long it was going to take. So then after a few months, I wrote back to the commission, and I said, what do you think if I change this to where people can make their pieces at home and then mail them to me, and I'll put it together. So we still have the end result will still be something that people contribute, that I put together, but it's just a little bit different on how we go about doing it. They'll just do it on their own and give it to me, and trust that I'll just put it in there
and
somewhere.
you just had more people participating because of that.
Yeah,
too.
in a way. I really didn't know how these little workshops were going to do. We did one at the school, and the school was very excited about
This
this
was
project.
A3?
A3, yeah.
Here on Main
So-
Street.
Right. Just 2 blocks down, right? 3
Yes,
blocks down.
yes.
So they were, the principal and a couple of the teachers were very excited about it. And so they hosted the first little workshop that we did. And then we couldn't do any more after that. So when I was looking for a place to display it, I was wanting to do it at the end of this, I think, next block, or at the end of, just at the top of Main Street, there was a big wall there that I thought could work. But they kind of wanted it, and I said, okay, well, then I looked at their walls and looked at a couple of different places, and eventually settled on the. And also I needed to kind of know the size of the wall, so I
Yes.
can,
Of
course.
so I know how big
heartbreaking
and
would it be
how,
if you were just one ramen packet too wide? One Calpico bottle
I'd have
too
to like
tall.
cut it off, right? Cut off the ramen.
Yeah.
But anyway, it all worked out.
Well, thank you so much for bringing that message, that thoughtful and beautiful art to this town and this community. I think, is there anything else you want to say about it? Otherwise, we will let you, we'll say thank you for your time, because I know that you endured my lateness today. It's just embarrassing. I'll keep
And
saying
she's
it.
leaving for Taiwan tomorrow.
So.
Extraordinary.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, but thank you. I really appreciate Aimee bringing this. It's nice to know that the piece still has a little, it's still
It's alive.
on people's
it's got energy
minds.
behind
So
it.
yeah,
Yes.
So
And it
it's
was
nice.
one of the very few large-scale Asian American artists that I knew here in Springfield. So that was so fulfilling for me. So thank
Great.
you for
I'd
doing
like to make
that.
some more.
Yeah,
Excellent.
let's do it.
Wonderful. This short interview is accompanied also with a longer discussion with you, Aimee. And so we'll proceed with that portion and say thank you so much, Ms. Liu, for being here.
Thank you.
Okay, so welcome to a wonderful continuation of my discussion with Aimee Yogi. We can continue to dive into now your background, and I'm happy to have you here. We're all happy to be here. This is great.
Thank you, Thomas. And thank you, Mimi, for being here. Okay, so I'll give you a little bit about my background. I'm Aimee Yogi. I was born and raised in Hawaii, born on the Big Island in Hilo. As I was telling Thomas, my grandfather was the first one to emigrate from Okinawa, and all of my grandparents came from Okinawa. So I am 100% Okinawan, which is a very different culture from Japan.
Yeah.
It was its own kingdom, and in fact was at one time under the possession of Taiwan. So we're very close neighbors in culture. Okay, so my grandfather emigrated from Okinawa in 1908 to work for the sugar plantation as a sugar cane grower. That is what his family did in Okinawa. And so he was able to buy the family 95 acres in Mountain View, about 15 miles outside of Hilo, on the Volcano Highway, 95 acres in 1920. So we have been there.
So the sugar industry must have been very profitable.
It was. It was, yeah. And he was able to, grow and, buy property.
And I'm sure he worked his butt off.
Yes, he was able to buy the property, and however was not able to become a citizen until the 1950s, right? So, so anyway.
Not to interrupt, but what a fascinating, juxtaposition between, you can contribute to the economy, you can have a business, but you cannot live and be a citizen.
Right.
You're not one of us, truly.
Right, yeah. So, but that was, for him, it was a lifestyle, it was a living. He would not be able to do that in Okinawa because he was the second son. He would not inherit his father's farm. So anyway, I grew up. We lived there for 4 years. My grandparents had the farm, and then my parents decided to move to Honolulu, where they could work, have jobs. My dad wasn't going to grow sugarcane. He had been educated at Iowa State University and was a counselor at Hilo High School. But anyway, so we moved to Honolulu. He had a job with the supermarket, Times Supermarket, which was a family-owned grocery chain. But I grew up in Honolulu and then in Kailua, and I graduated from Kailua High School in 1966, and then went to the University of Hawaii for a couple of years, majored in journalism, I majored in liberal arts, and then decided I wanted to major in journalism. So I couldn't stay at the University of Hawaii and decided to transfer to the University of Oregon. It was a small enough town, had a great journalistic history, journalism school of history, and I didn't want to go to the major cities by myself, and so I moved to Eugene, graduated in 1970. It was the radical 60s, just a whole lot of fun.
Yeah.
And
Woodstock happened while you were in college.
Yeah, and worked on the at the Oregon Daily Emerald. I worked there.
Yes, which still exists now as just the Emerald.
Absolutely right. And that was just at the transition of becoming an independent of the university, becoming an independent newspaper.
That's very
because
important.
we were very, very limited in what we could say or do. And it was a very, very tough time because, frankly, in 1969-70, the whole state of Oregon hated us at the University of Oregon. We were.
Tell me how you really feel. No, it's real though.
Yeah, it was. They wanted to shut us down. We were protesting the war, and it was. Yeah, they wanted. Governor McCall threatened to close our school, send in the National Guard because he didn't like the protests. It was a very scary time, and especially to be at the Emerald and one of the top 10 radical newspapers in the nation. So
been fighting the fight, haven't you?
Yeah, well, it was
laying the groundwork
I
for a lot of
depended
work
on
to be done.
On my, she looks like a nice Japanese girl from Hawaii, so she's not doing anything, and I got a lot of stories that way.
Yeah.
But anyway.
And that's good.
But anyway, it was.
All right,
it was
let's
an
get a
exciting
little
time.
juicy. Were there times people were angry about what you wrote about them afterwards? They thought
not what I wrote about, but what we used the F word in our stories, and because freedom of speech and all that, and so it seemed like we were out of control because we were not the quiet student staff, and we were out there, and our editors were the leaders of the protests, and
so they continue to have an excellent journalism legacy at UO.
Yeah, absolutely, and so then I graduated in 1970 on time, and decided to stay in Eugene. It was very comfortable to be a single woman in Eugene, so I got a job. My dad says, "Well, if you're looking for a job, I always take civil service exam and get a job." And that was being held right on campus. So went in one Saturday, took the civil service exam, kind of aced it out, had a 99. So I could
humble brag.
Yeah. I got on the list, for entry level
There's
clerical
two super
support.
ultra Asian moments. One, you're like, I got 99. Also, when I went to college, Thomas, I graduated on time. And I was there 4 years. Boom, 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 boom. This is what we can do when we're Asian. We can share in-group jokes.
Yes.
While also knowing that stereotypes have a negative impact on culture.
Well,
so we'll probably get to that too. But gosh dang, my mom hustled me hard to make sure my grades were good. A- was not acceptable.
Yeah.
I derailed you. I apologize.
Well, okay, as an only child of a Japanese American family, all of my cousins and all Japanese American girls at the time were expected to be elementary school teachers. That was the best profession they could have.
Oof.
Well, I knew I wasn't going to do that. So I had to find my own path, kind of, and I knew I wasn't going to grow up unless I left home because my mother would worry about me every time I went out at night or something. So I thought, okay, being at a university, a lot of structure, safe around me. So I came to the University of Oregon. But my eyes were open when my dad sat me down and talked to me. He rarely did, but he said, okay, now that you've graduated from high school, you have a choice. You can go to college, and I'll pay for that, or you can go to work. Me, the only child, the precious treasure of this family, go to work. So, well, I'm going to college. So that got me on the road, and it was.
I could see that on the placard in the museum exhibit. Me go to I go to work. I'm going to college. I love it. I love that. That tenaciousness is what continues to empower what you're doing today, Aimee. And I'm really glad to know it.
I was, they always tell you, you'll thank me for this later. And I absolutely do, because he taught me how to be self-sufficient. If you make your own money, nobody can tell you how to spend it, right? So, yeah, he taught me that. So I went to work and got a job with the university. It was clerk 1, entry level, and it was way fun. I got to be the night manager for the main desk store in the student union.
Cool.
Which meant that I got to work from 3 to 11:30, and managed the main desk. We had student employees, so they expected me to know what I was doing, and some of them were older than me because I was only 20. Yeah. So, and I, in my interview, they said, what's your best characteristic? And I said, I love working with people. And I realized famous last words. You didn't know what you were saying.
Yeah.
It's just something you're supposed to say. But anyway, we had all kinds of people, and international students that we had to take care of and everything. So it was a very, very wonderful job. And so I continued, and then in 1984, I was able to get a job. I wanted to get into computer work, and I'd heard about it, so I got out of the student union and into the library.
Great.
I got into interlibrary loans, so we were definitely on the leading edge.
With other institutions like LCC, OSU?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's definitely something we take for granted that is so common to place today with higher ed institutions near one another.
Right.
But
and we were expected to. We were an academic library, which is and into resource sharing, because we didn't have the money to buy all of our books, so we were lending and borrowing all over the world.
Wow.
So have some wonderful stories about that. But in the 22 years from 84 to 2007 or 2006, the last 22 years, we saw the breakup of the Soviet Union. We saw the fall of apartheid and the reunification of Germany. So fabulous. Having sent books and articles to these countries to see the change, the epic changes they went through was just wonderful. So, and then I retired.
When I hear you talk about that, simply the act of sharing knowledge is something we're trying to do right now. And for me to participate in that with you and talking about these, I know that you're not saying you claim credit for the fall of the Berlin Wall and the end of South African apartheid, but I truly believe that it was a part of a movement of ideas that you were very much involved in that. And that you continue to be involved with so many nonprofits today as well. I know you want to get to that, but you unroll your story however you please. I'm here to facilitate it.
I'm ready to go on to that.
Sure.
So, having worked for one of the biggest nonprofits in the county, the University of Oregon, I decided in retirement that was all going to be my social circle would disappear, and so what was I going to do? I was already participating with the Oregon Asian Celebration, the Asian American Council, and very active in that. We and the Japanese American Association, we created all of those organizations and brought them up and managed and maintained them, so that it was my group that 6 of us that built the drums for taiko, that we got the wine barrels from Hinman Vineyards and recycled the white oak wine barrels into taiko drums. So I
wouldn't have ever known that they weren't, imported from Japan.
Yeah, that's
when
what
I've seen
we
you
do
play.
here because
Fantastic.
Or yeah, a drum, a taiko from Japan is $10,000. So yeah,
Pocket change.
yeah.
No, that's a lot of money.
So yeah, so we bought these and we learned how to make taiko from Mark Miyoshi, who was at Shasta Taiko at the time. He's still in Shasta.
The middle school?
No, Shasta,
sorry.
California.
Oh, okay.
Way up there on the mountain.
Yes.
Yes. So he was a drum maker and had been with Denver Taiko, so one of the original American taikos. And so he was making the drums and he taught us how to do it. And so, yeah, so we had the wherewithal to process the drums. So anyway, so I thought, okay, I will continue my participation with the Asian American groups, but there's other things I want to do with my volunteer time. So I, as soon as within 2 weeks of retiring from the university in 2007, I applied to become a volunteer with Hospice of Sacred Heart. Yeah. So kind of death and dying had always been kind of intriguing to me. And,
Really?
And also having that sort of Japanese American or that Buddhist sense of how we treat the dying process.
Yeah.
Not really deep, but that was part of it. The reverence for the body and the ceremony and everything was a part of that maybe I could use for myself, but also bring it to the work or the volunteering. So I've been a hospice volunteer for 15 years, learned a lot. And about 10 years ago, our volunteer coordinator with hospice asked about 10 of us volunteers to set up a nonprofit, not set up a nonprofit, but help to help hospice families with the expenses that they face when their loved one goes on to hospice service. There are a lot of things that are not covered by Medicare, so
Yeah.
they have to put out the money for it.
No doubt. And that's so hard in that time, too.
Oh, yeah.
As if there's
You're
ever
dealing
an
with-
easy time to pay medical bills.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, she said, okay, we have items that are donated. We can get donations, especially from families. Person has passed away. They have medical equipment that, what are they going to do with it? How are they going to dispose of it? And then we have staff that have extra medical supplies. If we could set up like even a garage sale where we have a volunteer group take all that in, have a garage sale, sell it, pour that revenue back into support the non-Medicare services that hospice has, we can give that to the families, all that revenue. So we did garage sales and we worked around that, and then it came to the point where the volunteers had to set up a standalone nonprofit. By then I knew how to do that because we had set up the Japanese American Association, created bylaws, we had a board, we knew what we had to do, make the reports of donations or memberships or to the Attorney General's office.
Wow.
Yeah, so we knew how to do
You
that, how
realize
to make all that report, and how to set up a good set of bylaws for governance. And so we got together, we set up bylaws, we set up Hearts for Hospice. We set up what we were going to do with the money. In order to be a 501c3 charitable organization, you have to have a charitable distribution. And this was it. We would award grants annually to the nonprofit hospices and also organizations that support the end-of-life care. So about 11 years, 13, maybe 11, maybe about 2013, we set up the organization, and we got tired of hauling stuff around, so somebody found us this storefront, and we set up the store, and we have a warehouse to take in the extra materials that we cannot keep here. So Hearts for Hospice was formed, and you can see on the board there, that is just the total there is the total that has been awarded.
Can I take a picture and put it in the video too?
Absolutely. That is just the total that has been awarded to Peace Health, Hospice of Sacred Heart, and the other nonprofit hospice is Cascade Health.
And in half a year. That's a large amount of money for half a year, it seems.
No, it's not.
Oh, 2011 to 2022. I thought 2012
it's 11.
or 20.
Yeah, it's 11
21.
years. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's an
11
extraordinary
years
amount of money. That's the point I'm trying to.
Right, that's how much they've asked for. We have
Exactly.
generated, of course, more than that. We have in reserve more than that. But so to the non-profit hospices, Cascade used to be a part of Mackenzie Willamette Hospital until they went for profit. So now they're a separate organization, but they have the Pete Moore Hospice House, which is incredible. We also donate to Courageous Kids, which is a Peace Health program. It is one of two grief support programs for youth from ages 6 to 17. There's one in Portland, and there's Courageous Kids here. We also do Whitebird. We just started Whitebird Clinic.
It's been getting national attention for the Cahoots program.
For Cahoots, but they also have, we didn't know about, but until they asked us, they set up a program a couple of years ago, and we've been giving to build up the program. There is one medical social worker named Aimee May. She's part of Cahoots. Aimee May is will do end-of-life counseling for the unsheltered. There are simply people who will not come in. So she goes out wherever she's needed, talk about counseling, and make sure they have someone with them when the time comes, or she's with them. She's kind of on call 24/7. That's what she does. So we thought that was something we had no idea. I mean, we do hospice for homeless people if they come into a facility. We will take care of them. But if they don't come in, which many will not,
Sure.
she does it. So we support that. And then we have Patient Pet Advocates, which is a new program. Two hospice social workers decided that there's always this. I mean, we have 200 hospice patients on right now at Sacred Heart, okay? So many of them have pets, and toward the end of their life, if their family can't take care of the pet, what's going to happen to their pet? And they worry about that. So they go out on the intake and say, we have a system in place where we will rehome your pet. Yeah.
Wow.
So lots
Just
of
little things that are such a bedrock of.
absolutely. So that gives them comfort until they pass. Then we take care of the pet, and we've done, of course, dogs and cats and rabbits and ferrets.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
but,
would absolutely befriend a ferret if I was in a situation where that's, my friend. I could see it being my friend,
Yeah.
whether through
Yeah.
housed or unhoused.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. There's so much
So-
to talk about. I mean, I feel that you have certainly. We could talk about the Asian celebration. We could talk about the Japanese American Internment Memorial. Which one do you want to start with?
Okay. So anyway, that's what Hearts for Hospice does. Is it distributes grants for these programs.
And we're sitting in it right now in the
Yes,
storefront.
and there's about 50 volunteers who bring in the donations, clean them up, downstream some of what we can't use, and then puts it out for sale here to generate that. So I'm very, very proud of Hearts for Hospice.
Excellent.
Okay, so now I'd like to talk about the Eugene Japanese American Memorial, which was proposed in 2003 and dedicated. We built it, finished it in 2008, which is quite a story. But it has always been, 2008 it was done, but for years it has always been a question for especially the Japanese American community, what happened here in 1942? We know that Lane County was part of the Western Defense Zone. We know that all people of Japanese ancestry had to leave. They were forced to leave. They were put on trains, taken to prison camps, concentration camps, where they could take only what they could carry. And so
Horse stables in many cases.
yeah,
Just
absolutely.
very,
the assembly
very-
centers were stables. My aunt, my dad's oldest sister, who's still alive today up in Washington, was a student at Oregon State University at that time. Obviously, she wasn't going to go home to Hawaii, so she was here. And fortunately, my uncle had just graduated from Portland State University. They got married. May 1st, 1942. May 6, 1942, they were at the Pacific Exposition Center stables to wait for the train, or the train probably, to Minidoka. Yeah.
Wow.
23 years old, married and going to prison. Yeah, because she was Japanese. Yeah. So anyway, so I thought, okay, I work in the library. I know where to get the information. I know what to look up, and people were asking what happened here. So I looked up and found 3 Lane County residents, and I found them on an online database that had to register at the Civil Control Station here. They were registered in Eugene, and they were all University of Oregon students. So I went into the newspaper records for the Oregon Daily Emerald and found that, in May 1942, the Oregon Daily Emerald was saying farewell to 23 students. So it was the population of Japanese in Lane County were all Japanese American University of Oregon students. Imagine being 20 years old and told that you have to go to prison now because of who you are. So
It's simply trying to get an education in
absolutely.
the country you live in and love.
Right, yeah. So I worked up the story of what happened because it's phenomenal what the University of Oregon did for them. Okay, and that's kind of an unknown story.
Well, it's about to be known now. And I even said to be thinking about time and stuff, we shouldn't be thinking about that. I think it'll be fine. I think it'll probably roll and roll and roll. And this
Well,
is the
you
time
can-
to get the story out.
Okay.
So I just want you to know, don't ever let me feel like I'm pressuring the story into a further cage when we're
okay.
trying to let it out.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. So, So to begin with, February 19, 1942 is the Day of Remembrance because President Franklin Delano Roosevelt signed Executive Order 9066 designating a Western Defense Zone in Washington, Oregon, California, and parts of Nevada. giving the military the right to remove anyone they deemed a danger to national security. So all persons of Japanese ancestry had to register in their counties of residence. By June 1942, they were forcibly removed and incarcerated in concentration camps. And that is what they were called. Mm-hmm. There were 3 Lane County residents, all University of Oregon students. In fact, the Japanese American population in Lane County was centered on campus. There were 23 students, and here are their names. Chie Arai, Harry Yoshiro Fukuda, Midori Funatake, Mary Furusho, Frank Hachiya, Ted Hachiya, Thomas Hayashi, Woodrow Ichihashi, Kenji Inahara, Harold Ito, Makoto Iwashita, Grace Ikuko Kumazawa, Alice Kawasaki, Takuo Kawauchi, Samuel Teruhide Naito, Kenzo Nakagawa, Ellen Ogawa, Tadashi Osaki, Lawrence Takei, George Uchiyama, Hitoshi Watanabe, Michi Yasui, and Robert Shu Yasui. Okay, so here's what the University of Oregon did. At the beginning of March 1942, Carl Onthank, who was the Dean of Personnel Administration, led the effort to support the Japanese American students. By the end of March, the National Japanese American Student Relocation Council was established by a coalition of West Coast universities, the National YMCA and YWCAs, and the American Friends Service Committee. Colleges were requested in inland universities to admit our students who were incarcerated. Students were asked to register and were guaranteed admission and transportation to the new colleges and universities. Most of the students returned to their home counties in order to help their families. A few made their way to other locations to complete their education. On May 1942, there were no Japanese Americans in Lane County. So here is the history after
It's just not that long ago.
No,
you know, I'm here
no,
every
it
day.
isn't.
You and I are here every day, and it just is amazing to think that only 80 years ago
Yeah.
there were 0.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Feel free to
Yeah.
proceed. It's
Yeah.
just it hit me
That
there.
it was here in Lane County.
Mhm.
So by September 1943, 5,000 students on from the West Coast had been placed in 529 colleges and universities inland to continue their education. Okay. Now, in other instances, during the war, of course, we know about the 442nd Regimental, the segregated regimental combat team of Japanese American soldiers. There were also the segregated 522nd Engineering Unit of Japanese American soldiers, and General Patton's Tank Corps included segregated African American soldiers. Now, they were, of course, behind the combat lines, fixing the roads or providing support for the combat soldiers, foot soldiers, on the front lines. However, the engineering unit and General Patton's Tank Corps were all assigned to view, and to aid in the liberation of the Dachau and Auschwitz concentration camps.
Sure.
Yes. So to see the liberation of the victims, of the survivors of the concentration camps. So you can imagine what it is like for young men whose families were in concentration camps and who bore the weight of, and the others who bore the weight of history of slavery, lynching, and massacre when they saw the final solution, the Holocaust. You can imagine that.
Yeah.
And in effect, there was a recent documentary done by PBS that noted this because it was never acknowledged that these men saw this. But anyway, because of that, it also explains how these veterans returned to the U.S. after the war and worked together to build a better country for their families and communities. By 1963, Japanese American concentration camp survivors and veterans joined Martin Luther King on the March on Washington. And in 1964, we had the Civil Rights Act. In 1995, after the Oklahoma City bombing of the Alfred Murrah Federal Building, Dale Minami led a team of Japanese American attorneys as legal first responders for the Middle Eastern Arabic American citizens who were being harassed and detained as suspected terrorists in Oklahoma City, 1995.
I don't think I have to remind the audience that that community had it was a white terrorist, a white domestic terrorist.
Yes.
And all of this bigotry and this discrimination, this stereotyping, this profiling, it continues against so many people of color groups.
Yes, it does. So, in 2019, Japanese American concentration camp survivors have led the effort to close the detention centers on the southern border. These are the detention centers for the refugees and immigrants coming from Latin America and really all over the world. Recalling their own separation from their families in 1942, they, with the support of Suda for Solidarity, have been involved in direct action against detention centers for immigrants and refugees. That continues today. So the takeaway from all this is, having gone through the injustice that this particular community has, after 2 presidential apologies, redress, and reparations, the injustice continues. And it is up to all of us to fight for the democracy we want to see and we cherish. And we must stand united with everyone who suffers injustice.
I think that's so important.
Yes.
And I hope it's something that's spurred on by when people visit the memorial itself.
Yes.
Because I'd love to hear if you're willing to share about what it looks like, where it is. I think it's such an anchor of the performing arts. It's by the Holt Center. Hospitality. It's by a historic hotel that's changed its name a few times now recently. I used to work there, so I wanted to rattle it off. But and just in the heart of downtown, a space that is so frequented, and so I even honestly, to be honest too, I think a lot of unhoused people have been in that space and have experienced it too, and to see the suitcases and the history, and I think it's just a very important space. So tell me about, because I take it for granted.
Sure, right. The Eugene Japanese American Memorial is at the Holt Center. It's the garden on the north side, right on, 6th Avenue and Willamette. Mm-hmm. That is the site of the Civil Control Station that the Japanese American students had to go and register.
Wow.
That declared that they would all be removed by May.
Where the Holt Center is now.
Where the Holt Center is. It was,
Didn't know
you
that.
can read the address, 34 West 6th Street. That is the Holt Center. And that is why, that garden is there. And as it turns out, our Asian American history, we just found out, is in that neighborhood. because we just found out the Natural History Museum did a dig at the Homes for Good Market Commons apartments and uncovered some Chinese porcelain. And they traced it back to this Chinese American couple who ran a restaurant and a gift shop from 1912 until 1928. So we've been here 100 years in Eugene. But it was right there at about 6th and Willamette. So and there were a couple of Chinese laundries. There was a boarding house for Chinese workers. So that is our neighborhood.
Absolutely.
Yeah. 6th and Willamette.
I'll just interject to say that I used to work there as a bellhop, and so I was driving shuttles, and I felt honestly in many ways just a little bit as a detour that I would drive people to and from the airport a lot, and so and it's a prominent hotel where I felt I was very much an ambassador to Eugene in some ways. Sometimes
Sure.
I would be the first Eugenian that a lot of people would actually talk to and have a conversation with, and I'd be the last Eugenian to talk with them on the way out in many cases.
Right.
And I thought that was a really special experience at times because of the unique nature of our community. People come from so many different places and call Eugene home and call the Eugene Springfield area home. And I stood out there at the bell cart where we keep the valet keys, and in so many instances, just letting my mind wander, and just I hadn't even known that it was such a deep. I was in my community geographically. I didn't even know it. That's kind of what I'm getting at.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So thank you for telling me.
Yeah, and initially when I first saw that poster, it was so painful because we didn't know anything about the people. We didn't know. When I first read the names, which was only a couple of years ago, I thought, oh my God, that's my history. I worked at the University of Oregon for 36 years. These are my students.
Yeah.
These are my alumni. These are my friends. And that's when it became real. And, like you, it was such a painful thing to look at because I was going up to special collections to see what the university did to or for these students. And I had worked there 30 years. What if they just called the FBI and turned them in? What did they do? But they did. I found out they did this magnificent effort. They got them all to other universities and schools. And what a magnificent effort that was. So I was, and the other thing too is you find out your allies, okay, when you look into this painful history. Because at the dedication, we always had Misa's.
In 2008?
Yeah, 2008. We always had this friend of Misa's, Misa Joe, who provided the impetus for doing Obon and doing the Asian celebration and playing taiko, and she had her friend there who is indigenous. He's Native American. Bob Tom. He's a Sayusla tribe with the tribal government there. But Bob Tom was there, and he was listening to all of this, and as he left, I hadn't talked with him very much, but as he left, he said, we share a common history. And I said, oh, well, thank you. And I didn't know what he was talking about, really, but I thought, well, they were on the reservation, and they were persecuted and removed from their land to be taken over to the reservation. But I said, thank you. And I have come to realize that what he meant was we couldn't have built the Eugene Japanese American Memorial and had the plaques and have the basalt and have this garden there like we wanted. It was going to be way too expensive. We didn't have that kind of funding. So somehow the Grand Ronde Reservation and Spirit Mountain Foundation offered a challenge grant. We'll give you $50,000 if you raise the rest, which is exactly what we needed, $100,000 to build that memorial. And we had it done. Yeah, because
I should be thanking my indigenous brothers and sisters and siblings of this
right.
earth a lot more.
And yeah,
that's amazing.
And so then I was reading about, the indigenous people went through, and especially the Grand Ronde worked for 30-something years because they voted for termination, and then they wanted to get recognition back because all of their educational, medical resources were taken away. So anyway.
Awful.
So I read The People Are Dancing Again about the recognition. We are celebrating this year the recognition recapturing that recognition 45 years ago is when they finally got recognized again. And so I was reading the book about the fight for it, and it said, it was very telling. In 1942, when the Japanese were incarcerated in their concentration camps, the man who ran the concentration camps was Dylan Myers. He was federal war relocation director, and they were known for not having enough food or medical supplies for the people, and it was awful.
Yeah.
And then 1946,
children, families.
Yeah.
Yeah,
children died of malnutrition. So anyway, in 1946, when the camps were closed, he just closed them and said, "Okay, you're on your own. Go back or go wherever, but you can't stay here." So he just shoved the people out there. And so Dylan Myers was out of a job after the war. And during the Eisenhower administration in 1952, he became head of the Bureau of Indian Affairs. Bureau of Indian Affairs. And the Republicans were always hot to save money. So they thought, hey, if we close down the reservations, promise them money, compensation for the timber that they hold, thousands of acres of timber, and say, yeah, we'll compensate you for the land, the reservation land, and the timber that you hold if you will vote for termination. You've got great jobs, you're living off the reservation, you came back from the war, you're skilled, you don't need public support, you don't need the feds watching everything that you do. So they managed to arrange for 16 people to vote at Grand Ronde to terminate. They voted to terminate, and it was signed. So Grand Ronde lost there. And then they were hardly compensated for the reservation land. They were never compensated for the timberland.
Really?
That was the usual. Try to get money out of the feds. Okay, so that was Dylan Myers. That was our common history. Yeah. So, consequently, having looked at this very, very tragic injustice, we were able to find our allies, and there was a long history of that. So,
when you initially said you learn who your allies are, I believed this was not going to go well. I believed you were basically going to say you learn who your allies are not. you know?
Yeah.
And that's an amazing thing to
Yes,
have learned. So
absolutely.
thank you for that.
Yes, absolutely.
And
It's-
there's the Asian celebration, and then there's CERT, and there's all these things that you're involved in. It's phenomenal. It's phenomenal.
Thank you. Well, it couldn't have done it alone.
Mm-hmm.
It was just, initially it was with the Asian celebration and things. It was, if you don't do it, nobody else will. So, so we built drums and we played taiko. But anyway, yeah, it was just that, to support the community.
We're good.
We're good. Okay. So I'll get to my last, and it isn't easy, of course. We were talking about that earlier, Mimi and I. It isn't easy to be a hospice volunteer. There's you have to have that calling, I guess.
Right.
But also what got me through it. I mean, to sit with a dying person is pretty daunting, especially for somebody who's never had children, and I didn't even babysit. So
Wow.
what made me think?
Yeah.
And I worked in a library. What made me think I could sit with someone who's could have an episode or something, but what got me through it was that I could bring the resources and the knowledge to the Asian American community. I would have that for them. And it doesn't matter that I don't speak all these languages. I could tell their family what we have available. They could tell their elders or whoever needed to know. We'd have access to information. So that's what got me through that. And also, because we're such a small community, I think there were only one or two of us that were Asian in the hospice volunteer corps. But even if I didn't know them, and if I came to sit with Grandma and I didn't speak her language, at least I'd look familiar to her. So I thought that would be a comfort. So that's why I did hospice.
Every little thing helps.
Yeah. And with the Japanese American Memorial, I had access to information. If I couldn't find it, who could?
Yeah.
I knew my way around a database. So, yeah, it was me. I knew how to find the information for our community.
Do you have a doctoral degree? Should I be calling you doctor?
Oh gosh,
Yeah.
no!
Okay.
I'm not even professional staff at the library.
Okay.
Yeah, you have to be a librarian.
All right.
Yeah,
All right.
Yeah.
Well,
So
anyway, doctor in my heart. Honorary.
and then also I got into CERT because we are facing here in Oregon. We are facing disasters. And the big one.
What does CERT mean for the people?
Oh, okay. CERT is Community Emergency Response. So it is a citizen corps group of volunteers who are trained in disaster response. And our particular group trains neighborhood groups to take care of their neighborhoods, to do first aid, to damage assessment, to train everybody else. We have ham radio operators, so we're now on our little handheld walkie-talkies talking to each other, and training people to be their leaders, to be able to take information, because frankly, in a mass casualty incident, your first responders are not going to be available. Yeah. So we need to take care of our neighbors. So 3 years ago, we were getting ready for the big one, the big earthquake and tsunami. Yeah. Not so much tsunami here, but the big earthquake. It was
overdue superquake.
Absolutely overdue. Every 300 years, we finally believe the indigenous stories about. Yeah, I mean, before 1986, I think, we thought Oregon was just a blessed landscape. We didn't have tsunamis. We didn't have earthquakes. Nothing real big, California had all that stuff. And
Yeah.
then we had a tsunami. I think in '64, we had a tsunami that went from Seaside down to Crescent City and caused damage. And all these little boys were out there listening to the noise and watching this wave go through their yards and down, down. And all these little boys grew up to be geomorphologists, hydrologists, archaeologists. They all grew up and realized that we have a ghost forest off the coast because the land subducted. It sank in an earthquake, and the water rushed back and came forward as a tsunami. And there are traces of tsunami in the hills. So it was a big one. There were villages wiped out, and we just didn't believe the dating on the indigenous record, just didn't believe it. However,
To clarify, they had mapped out essentially, what's a good word? A hypothesis for how often they would happen, or the recording of these events
oral
in the
stories,
past
yes.
through orals?
Okay, oral
Right,
stories. Okay. Oral stories told by the Native Americans here, especially on the coast, because, said they lost some villages. They just dropped. And so they collected those
Sure.
they collected those stories, and somebody in Japan checked out the date and looked in Tokyo's records of an earthquake tsunami at the same time. They found it because, they're pretty diligent about keeping records. They found it 300 years ago. Well, 320
That's
years
cool.
ago. Yeah.
Corroboration through
absolutely.
different methods of preserving history and understanding what's
Because they
occurred.
never even thought of an earthquake in Peru creating a tsunami in Japan or Hawaii, or in Alaska. They never thought of something we can't see. This tsunami just came. Yeah. So now we know. So that's what we're getting ready for. We know kind of the scale of the earthquake and what effect it will have here in the valley. Probably the bridges. That's the major problem. The bridges across the river is how you're going to, deal with that. So consequently, the emergency managers, especially Peace Health, has its own emergency manager. What's going to happen to all the doctors and nurses who work at Riverbend but live in South Eugene, right? Or, how are they going to get across the river? So what they have done is they have urgent care clinics in all the neighborhoods, okay, including here. But they are stocked in case of a disaster of that type to take care of their neighborhood. So in case that happens and they can't get across to Riverbend, they have the University District and the urgent care centers. They're all stocked. In fact, during the pandemic, that was the first thing they did, was they checked each of those urgent care centers to make sure they had enough masks and gowns or gloves or hand sanitizers. They checked every day. There's an emergency manager up there. So we were prepared
Well, I
for
can't help
that.
but think sometimes in this world where we all have our blind spots and our ignorance on certain things, we Asian Americans in this community experience that sometimes when we just talk about our own stories, other community members who aren't in our community think, why are you making this all about you? Why can't you just be colorblind? Why can't you? That doesn't speak to me, or that's, you're trying to push me out, or all these increasingly different ways to basically say that negative sentiment, right? I'm also appreciating that you are involved in this emergency response that affects everybody, and that's undeniable.
Absolutely.
You know?
Yeah. Well, I was right, and I was especially concerned of our elders. Even during the pandemic, here we are worried about the big one, and we get in 2020 a pandemic and a wildfire that comes to the border of Springfield for the first time in my
Holiday farm
life.
fire.
Yeah.
Smoketober 2020.
Yes.
That was awful.
Yes. And the pandemic isolated all of us. And so we sent out, people saying, how can we help? What can we do? So we did a call out for, okay, if you need something, let us know. If you know of somebody who lives by themselves, call them. Find out if they need something, tell them, give you a call. If they need to go to the doctor, if they need to get groceries, we'll do it. Somebody will run and get it for you. So, and it turned out, everybody was taking care of each other, so we didn't really have calls for that, but
I want to correct myself. I think it was September 2020, and I said Smoketober.
It was Labor Day.
Smoketember, because I'm used to now, unfortunately, we're still seeing air quality issues in October of 2022, and so the season seems to be.
Yeah,
I
it
don't
was
want to
Labor
say
Day.
prolonging, but anyway. Well, thanks for what you're doing. It's good to know that preparedness in any capacity can apply to what's going to happen, even if it isn't what you're expecting.
Right.
Expect the unexpected. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And I know that what also happens is that a lot of people are on Facebook.
Yep.
And they also get, oh my God, there was an earthquake in St. Helens, or something like that. And it goes out on, and oh my God, what are we doing? There's going to be, a fire coming down. And it just gets people overly excited or overly afraid of what's happening. They don't know the scale of what's happening.
Not to get too into this, but people were just blamed and made up stories about arson. Like PDs were having to tell, and sheriff's offices were having to say it wasn't Antifa, because people were just making things up. And
yes,
it happens
you
in
were
many
in the
sides
middle
of the
of that.
spectrum,
Yes.
making things up to use that opportunity to say,
Thank you.
to say it's this group, it's that group that I oppose, when we should, and we did see some coming together, but that's when we should be all coming together and
Yes.
and fight these fires
Right.
and protect our people.
Yes. Yeah.
All of our people.
And that's why I had access to, say, it was public information, but it was real information. So I asked people, please don't do that. You're just scaring people needlessly. So just keep an eye out for the air quality index, or the storm is heading this way, or we've had tornadoes in the valley of all things. But just be prudent about what you say. I don't want to get people freaked out needlessly, stressed out, especially. So that's why I do CERT, is to give out the information, to make sure that people know if you have to evacuate, have a go bag, and this is all you need to have in there. We'll come and get you. So just to build support that way.
Yeah.
And okay, the other thing is we want our community to be prepared to shelter in place. Sometimes that's the best thing. Mm-hmm. Or evacuate safely. We're kind of getting together our evacuation plans of what road. We don't have a whole lot of roads to get out of here.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I-5, we're so connected by bridges and things. So and of course for wildfire, Eugene is working really rapidly now with and Lane County is with defense zones around the houses. So in case a fire comes by, it doesn't destroy your property. And also, we are out there passing out information to the kids. We were at Jerry's Home Improvement doing Fire Safety Day, passing out comic books to the kids because I want them to know how they can help their family.
Yeah.
I want them to know they can do something. And they are so happy to see that.
Wow.
Because
No one
they
wants to
feel
grow up
so
feeling
helpless.
helpless. Yeah.
Yeah. So here's what you need in your go bag. Read to your sister or brother and say, I'll help you put one together. And here it is, And so let's make plans so they're a lot less stressed out.
Good.
So, yeah. And it's a neighbor-to-neighbor effort, and we all want to be together in this. Yeah. So, yes.
Well, so you've been volunteering. Are you on the board or are you?
I am on the steering committee.
I assume that, probably doesn't need to be, maybe we should say you're not speaking on behalf of these organizations.
Oh, no,
in order to be
not
here.
at
You're
all.
just sharing some of your involvement.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Do you want to, we've gotten a pretty great in-depth discussion. Do you want to say anything about the Asian celebration? Because that, to me, is one of the most visible. The Oregon Asian Celebration is truly one of the most visible statements and experiences of Asian community togetherness, identity, Pan-Asian difference, all sorts of things in this state.
Yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely. It is.
And you were involved in its creation, I believe.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Okay.
I came in on the second year, I think.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So you're an early on member.
Yes, and it's interesting. Because it was Ada Lee who wanted to bring together the Asian community at the time, and she was having Lunar New Year parties and New Year's parties, and so got a core group of people together and wanted to. In the 80s, this was in the 80s, we were dealing with a trade war of the big five American car makers against Toyota, because Toyota was selling more cars than General Motors. And how dare they? Because we were saving gas. And and it was a trade war, and both Japan and China, their products don't hold up. It's just inexpensive, and there was a real image problem. And it was so we had to come together because
now
definitely
it's the American cars with the image problem. People know longevity is not the best. Usually,
and it was affecting our children, and their friends, and so anyway, we got together and said, how can we show pride in our Asian culture, and so we kind of picked Asian entertainment. I chose Asian crafts because I'm a basket maker, and Asian businesses and things like that, and we even talked about having. At the fairgrounds, having little Asian villages, here's a little Chinese village, and here's a little Japanese village, and then we got hit with multicultural education by Misa Jo, who said, "Wait," because she was a middle school teacher, she was having to bring the Asian American kids to the Asian celebration. We needed those kids for Eugene Tycho. We needed those kids to feel welcome and visible. The reason why is because they were going to graduate from high school and they would go to the big cities to find who they were. They did not see themselves here.
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay, they
I
were
don't
going to
have
go to
to-
San
I don't have
Francisco,
to-
Seattle, because they did not see themselves
That's our
here.
lives. That's I know
Yeah.
so many people. Yes.
Yeah. So we went, okay. So it has to be Asian American, and so we had to stop calling ourselves Orientals. That was an old, archaic term. And oh boy, the battles we had to go through
Yeah.
to do that. But we had to do the Asian American identity in this, and that's just when this Asian American student movement was coming up also. So that was very good. That taiko was a big part of it, because believe me, women didn't play taiko in Japan,
I'm sure.
right? Women
Yeah.
didn't do lion dancing in China or Taiwan.
Wow.
And we were going, yeah, but we want to do this. We love it. Yeah, women didn't do that in the countries. So we went, okay, there's a benefit to being American, and we're going to use it.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
There you go.
yeah. So we did. So, yeah, it was good. So the Asian...
I came up and I actually did get to play a little bit of taiko on the stage in first grade. So this would have been like 2001.
Yeah.
Oregon Asian Celebration at the time was the Lane Event Center, where it was so many years.
Yeah, yeah.
And the passport going around. Also so many wonderful, the food, and even just as for me, actually, this is the funny thing that a child thinks about, right? Year after year, I would go there, and so I didn't know that event center hosted other things.
Oh,
as a
you
kid,
thought
you
that's all
go
it
and it's
did.
always the Asian celebration, and then I learned it's also gun shows and also the Lane County Fair, which
Yeah.
I think I went to that too, but a little later. But I just thought that was funny,
Yeah.
but it was an intro to those other things like the art displays that happen and all sorts of cool things that happen
Right.
that make you come back and are interested in that space. That space, honestly, this is a tangent, but it's always being talked about as how we're gonna maybe build this baseball stadium here, or how to better utilize that space. But the Asian Celebration was a big part of the community impact that was had in that building, I think, for a long time.
Right. And we're probably never going to go back there. Yeah.
I think I heard you say that.
Yeah. It was expensive, 30,000 for 2 days.
Yeah.
And also, the last two Asian celebrations in the fairgrounds, I had to because we were having a lot of mass shootings in ethnic festivals, mass shootings, music festivals. We had volunteers who said, I don't think I can do it this year, because they were afraid of coming into that one big room. Okay? Yeah, right. They were. And these were our lead volunteers. So knowing what I did from CERT, knowing that we had an active shooter formula or protocol, okay, from FEMA, this is what you do. And also, because I was a hospice volunteer, and Peace Health was shut down because we had two active shooters, two different guys in 1 year in the emergency rooms, threatening to shoot up the staff and the people. They shut it down, hired extra security. We had to code in. It was shut down. And in 2021 or 2020, all the volunteers were given the FEMA guidelines for active shooter. We were given all of the alarms, code black. Yeah. And it really sucked, but I knew what had happened, and I had my FEMA guidelines from them. They had given it out to their hospice volunteers. I mean, we're a hospital. We're saving lives here. Yeah. So I thought, okay. I said, David, Tam, I have the active shooter FEMA guidelines that we just got from Peace Health. I want to have it in the volunteer packet. They have to know that we have a process in place that if they suspect, they need to be on the lookout for suspicious people because they're walking in with their backpacks and stuff. Yes, right. That somebody will do something about it. It was always,
Mimi
I thought,
said off mic, the Asian celebration has hundreds of volunteers. So
right. 400 volunteers. 400 we have.
wow.
And yeah, they need to know what to look for, what to do in case someone starts shooting. Yeah. Or if they suspect somebody, call David Tam. So anyway, so we put that in place, but that was such an awful thing to do. That was such an awful thing.
It's very hard to think about between a rock and a hard place. No,
because
no
it
good
was,
solution.
It was, everybody loved the Asian celebration.
Yes.
And yet to have us all in one big room, yeah. Is this Service Master?
Service Master? We had a... Yeah, it's okay. I'll make sure it's...
Okay.
Still going good. Nice.
Oh, hi. Are you with Service Master?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Are you going to be noisy?
Well, I will be vacuuming eventually.
Okay. Oh, you're just come back?
I will be
Vacuuming.
vacuuming eventually.
Okay, fine.
All right,
Thanks.
great.
Okay, so we can finish. We're almost done.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we had...
Since we had that moment there, just thank you for letting us use this space because this is a
Oh,
wonderful space.
you're
and,
welcome.
And I'm grateful that it's going to be cleaned here. Sorry, that sounds really bad, but that's explaining that there could be some vacuuming. So we're going to, wrap up. But we've already, gone through so much awesome stuff, and
Good.
I want people to know as well that you are, they should know you're deeply involved in this project beyond being in this one video. This is you are helping us get stories out there because of your deep connections in the community. So super glad to have you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah. So let me finish up with the Asian
do.
celebration. So with the pandemic, of course, we couldn't have the Lane County Fairgrounds because the capacity they wouldn't have done it. So we were going to have it Asian night markets and the park blocks, but the surge happened, so that had to be canceled. So we did a quick pivot, and we did the one-day Asian celebration and Obon and Taiko Festival at Alton Baker Park, and managed to pull it together in a month, but got 6 or 7 food booths and got a children's carnival and Obon went on as usual, and everybody. Before David left that night, he said, "Oh boy, the food vendors are asking if they could sign up for next year because they did a whopping business. There were a lot of people there for them
Awesome.
during that time. So we were really happy with that. So consequently, we had the same situation this year, except we had like 8 months to get ready. So it's been pretty well decided that probably Asian celebration at Alton Baker Park is going to be permanent. And then Obon will have its own space and time on the main stage because Alton Baker Park allows us to grow. And as a pandemic space, it's great.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's
Well,
wide
there have
open.
been thriving cultural events of many, many different kinds there recently that I've been able to see. I don't even have to name. There's so many. So
Right. And kind of the wonderful thing is very minimal expenses as far as renting a building.
Good.
So we don't have to charge. And that brought up that whole issue is
Yes,
the
access.
reason we had to charge was and have 300 vendors and charge admission for 20,000 people, and was because of the expense of that rental.
Yes.
So now we've gone back to the original idea about the Asian celebration being open and free and welcoming, especially to the kids. So, yeah, a safe, inviting and welcoming environment. So, yeah, so the Children's Carnival from Eugene Gakuen Middle School, they run that. And then the Adventure Museum, Cami Hendricks and the Adventure Museum, which is a nonprofit, does activities, Asian activities too, and that is such a winner for the young kids to do. So yeah.
Really just floored by, I'm gonna sound too complimentary. I need to make sure I'm not too complimentary because I have to keep that up in every episode, and it might not come off as sincere, but it is sincere. There's a lot to appreciate about what we've been able to talk about here, the enduring legacy of so much that's come before, and so much that's going to continue to happen in this community.
Yes.
Yeah. So I want to invite everybody to check out the other 5 interviews that. Just full disclosure, this is the first one, So I don't know what order they'll be on the site or how they'll be projected, but thank you for participating as a viewer and a listener, and thank you, Aimee Yogi, for your time.
Thank you, Thomas and Mimi.
Thank you, Mimi. Come in the shot real quick. Do you want to come in the shot and just say, photographer, she's rocking it? There you go. All right. Bye, everybody.